We good?
Yeah, you're good.
I was waiting. Oh, my face is down there. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to CocoaHeads 177. Thanks for coming tonight. In the spirit of reconciliation, Melbourne CocoaHeads acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend the respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. Okay, tonight we have some great talks. We've got Marcelo Esperiaggio. I got it wrong. Esperiaggio. Sorry. Swift registry dependencies outside of Gift Hub. So yeah, no spoilers, but yeah, looking forward to that. And Michael Fletcher, you know, a fan favorite. The Craft of Code, so intriguing. We have a code of conduct here at CocoaHeads. So if you're being harassed or notice someone that's feeling comfortable in any situation or have concerns, please reach out to one of the organizers. Myself, Bok, Baz, Amy, you know. or there's also an online form, so an anonymous form if you want to leave feedback, which is the URLs down the bottom. Okay, some housekeeping. Toilets are outside, past the elevators to the right, and so are the emergency exits. So hopefully we don't need to use the emergency exits, but feel free to use the toilets. There's name tags at the door. I forgot to get mine. And if you see someone wearing a little blue sticker, it means they're new, so make them feel welcome. Great. As Box said earlier, if there's questions, I accept. Maybe Fletch might have something that's, unless the speaker asks for interaction during the talk, just wait till the end and we'll send a microphone around to ask questions. So the people online can ask questions as well in Slack. We want to thank our sponsors, Mantle Group, our gold sponsor. So they sort of host provide the venue and drinks and stuff for tonight. Thank you very much. We couldn't do it without you. And REA, our silver sponsor. So thank you, REA, who, yeah, good on you. Other events coming up, Coding Night next week on Wednesday. So yeah, that's an alcohol-free event. Everyone's welcome. We do it with Google and the Flutter community. So it's just, there's some great, indie app developers out there that are just working on their projects. If you can either help out or looking to learn, come join us. Social Night is Tuesday the 30th of July, so it's the last Tuesday of the month. I feel like it's still at the Imperial, or has it changed? Where is it now? Senton Road. Sainton Row. All right, I'll get those details somewhere. Yeah, it's on Meetup as well. Yeah, I just didn't look. We've got some other groups, so the Sydney CocoaHeads community, the GDG Melbourne, and there's also this AUNZ CocoaHeads.social that I didn't have the white barcode for, so I apologize for that. But that's got links to all the communities, like the CocoaHead communities in Australia and New Zealand. Cool. And then to find us directly, melbournecocoaheads.com, and then jump in Slack for tonight, the Melbourne Meetup channel, as well as just Melbourne in general. So Bok has something to say.
We do share that Slack instance with Sydney and Brisbane and Auckland and other CocoaHeads communities across Australia and New Zealand, so definitely a good way to keep in touch with everybody.
Yes, and there's like the individual Swift ones and stuff, which is everyone. Yep. Including, our Melbourne Meetup one is for tonight specifically, but then there's also the Melbourne Volunteers one, which if you want to get involved in the coding night, the social nights, and the tonight to just help organise events, just jump in there. Jobs is Australia-wide, and Speakers is Australia-wide, Australia and New Zealand-wide as well. So jump in there if you've got a talk or looking to get into speaking. There's people that will mentor you, and or you can just, if you've got a suggestion on someone you'd like to see speak, jump in there as well. Okay, let's start it off with Marcello. Marcello? Yep. For Swift registry dependencies, outside GitHub, thank you. Okay.
Great, we're here. Good evening. My name is Marcelo. I am an engineer at ANZ, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about Swift Registry and how it pertains to dependencies outside of GitHub. Thanks for coming. Well, to begin with, we're going to start by talking about this little tool that I built the other day called Swift Figlet. Let me jump to it. I got a couple. This is going to be a bit interactive. We're going to be talking about we're going to be jumping to code and coming back to presentation. Okay, so this is Swift Figlet. If I run it,
can you make that a bit bigger?
I sure do. There you go.
Thank you.
Is it good enough? Good. If I do run it, you will see that it's a very simple tool, and all it does it is emit an error. Oh, of course. Give me 1 second. Because the demo gods are not always with me. There you go. I'll run this from the command line. So if I do run Swift Figlet, I'm going to do Swift run. There you go. It's just a small tool. That. Thank you. Yeah. Well, it's good to have a fallback. It's just a small tool that every time I run, it prints hello CocoaHeads on a different font. And look at that. Hello CocoaHeads. Right? Thank you. I put a lot of effort into this. It's a very simple tool. And just to show what it does, it uses this application called Figlet. That's a very old application that's been, maybe comes from, I don't know, BSD to whatever, from back in the day. It's been coming on Unix after Unix. It's a command line tool you can install with Brew. And with this, I just call this dependency called swell, which we're going to talk about briefly. I call swell with this command i2 that gets me a fonts directory. And then I call ls with this font directory, and I get a list of fonts that the application supports. I get a random font out of the list. And then I call Figlet again, specifying the font that was chosen randomly and saying hello CocoaHeads. Very simple application, right? So if I go back here, we have seen that Swift Figlet depends on swell. And if I come back here and show you what it looks like, it's a dependency here in our package.swift. Okay, so it's here, and actually a bit of marketing if you want to use it yourself, it's in GitHub. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about tonight is what if swell can't be on GitHub? What if swell is an enterprise tool that cannot be actually open source? What if you don't trust GitHub to change tags all the time and point to different versions every time somebody does, every time your package resolves the packages? What if you're shy and you don't want it online? Okay, so that's when the Swift registry comes in, right? And to show you how it works, and here I am, I think I started on a wrong foot with the demo gods, but let's keep strong. I believe they will heed me eventually. If I come here to my swell run locally, I'm going to do a little command here that let me just write it because I cannot talk and
Can you blow it up a bit, Marcelo? Can you make it bigger?
probably can. Never tried this, but there you go. Okay, so I'm gonna do a Swift package registry. I'm going to do publish. I'm going to publish swell into a package registry. I'm going to do help because I'm blanking out. And I'm going to set a scope, Marcelo yes dot swell, which is the package name. I'm going to do a version. I'm going to do an URL. That's the URL where the registry is, which is going to be on HTTP p localhost 8080, and I'm going to do a command that just came out with the beta of Swift 6. It's called allow insecure HTTP. And if I do that, please gods help me to do a dance. What do you want? There you go. It's successfully published. One more thing that I have to do. Hold on, we're not done yet. One more thing that I have to do is I'm going to go back to my Swift Figlet, was running the application. I'm going to do a Swift. I'm going to do, again, package registry. I'm going to do a set as a subcommand. And I'm going to do a help because my memory is not good enough for this. And then I'm going to do a HTTPS, HTTP localhost 8080. I'm gonna set my scope as Marcelo. We're gonna talk about scopes later. But if I do this, it's going to complain because I did not add the last argument, which is allow insecure HTTP. There you go. And what this did was it created a file for me here in swiftpm-configurations.registry.json that tells me that packages that belong to the scope marcelo.es are in this server here called localhost 8080. Okay? So now I'm going to go back to Xcode, which was giving me a hard time, and I'm going to come here to my package.swift, and instead of using the GitHub address for it, I'm going to point to an ID. I'm going to point to my scope and package name, and here on the dependency, I'm going to put cello.e-es.swell, which is the ID of the package. And now I'm going to close Xcode because it's going through a resolution and it's going to fail, obviously. But I'm going to try and open this again. Second is the charm, right? There you go. It actually resolved. Can you see it? Right. So you can see here this little icon here on the left. It's a little bit different from the icon that we had before. Right, it's got a little bit of an edge on the box here. But you can see that it has resolved. It's a dependency that it has downloaded. And if I get to run it, will it work?
Must be fake it works.
Ah, come on, mate. I'm gonna do this from the command line again. Am I in the wrong one? Yeah, in the right one. So it's, you can see here that's actually fetching Marcelo-S. Marcelo-S swell, which is different from the message that we saw before when it was fetching from GitHub, right? And I can keep on running it because it's just so visually appealing. I love this. Right, so coming back to our presentation, what sort of witcher is this? Okay, well, it's actually a Swift package registry, right? It's a service specification that Apple released. Was it 3 years ago? It came with Xcode 14, so I think it would be
Swift 5.7.
Yeah, Swift 5.7. It's a service specification. It basically defines 6 endpoints, and those are all the endpoints that Swift needs to resolve packages, right? And it goes ahead and it gives us a guidelines on how to use it, including how it is implemented in the Swift package, in the Swift command itself, the Swift package command itself, like we saw using Swift package registry, and how to use from that, right? But point is, it is just a specification. So where exactly did swell go? Where did I push the swell to? Why was I running localhost? And here's where I introduce Swift Birdhouse. Thank you. Now, Swift Birdhouse is a project that I worked on the weekend. ChatGPT helped me with the logo, as you can see. It's a really simple, for now, it's a really simple implementation of the Swift registry. It tries to be as pure to specs as possible. It's running Hummingbird 2, which is a new server that's just coming out. As actually, the version 2 is not even out. I'm using RC1. RC2 came out yesterday, actually. It aims to be as light as possible, aims to be as fast and light as possible in runtime, and it's not ready for production. So just be warned. But like, watch the space. Yet. So let's go back and see the log, see what happened when we actually resolved the package. When I come here to my, here, no, there. If I come back here and I come here, this is where Swift package registry is running, and I'll show you what happened. When I published the package initially, it sent a put request to the registry, and here are the logs, right? And it sent a put request to my scope, to my package name, and to this version, right? Later, a couple of minutes later, when I was building it through the command line because Xcode wouldn't help, it was resolved to, it first started by checking if I have it, what versions of Swell I have, and then it's got some metadata about those versions. And then it downloaded a package of Swift for it, and it does that to check if the package has any other dependencies that it has to resolve as well. And then it weirdly goes back to the metadata for some reason, and I believe, and this is the internal implementation, I haven't gone that deep, but I believe it's to fetch the checksum of the packages of that version. And then it goes ahead and downloads the zip, which has the dependency itself. Okay? And if I go ahead on another step and I go here to this, it's going to be maybe too small, but this is, well, Rapid API, but it's just like Postman. It's just a client for accessing endpoint APIs, right? If it goes and it calls the first endpoint that we saw there, which is list package registries, releases, and if I run this, it's going to go through this endpoint here, Marcelo ES/swell, and it's going to return a list of releases that this package has published, this registry has published. If it goes here to fetch metadata, it's going to return a couple of stuff that's useful for the consumer to know, which would be the ID of that package for that specific version, and this checksum, which, in this checksum, as a side note, it is saved locally, just so that if you download a package again, it goes to, it checks if the package hasn't changed the checksum or not. If you go here and download this, it's going to download the package.swift of the package, and then it's going to go and this final endpoint here is just going to download the source archive. Okay, we're going to talk about this other point soon, and this one is the endpoint where we publish the package. That's it. That's 6 endpoints, and that covers the whole of Swift registry, and that's everything that we need for resolving packages. Cool. Let's talk about scopes, right? So scopes gives us the ability, and scopes in this case was Marcelo-ES. I decided to use the same one in GitHub, but it does not necessarily need to be the same one that's reflected in GitHub. But scopes gives us the ability of defining where we're going to be looking for packages, right? Which registry is going to be looking for packages. So suppose in this case here that we have 2 IDs. One is byteme.pixels and the other one is nerdvana.glitch, right? And those are 2 scopes that we're reaching out. And if we see the registry configuration for that specific package, we're going to see that they're going to be pointing, byteme is going to be pointing to one registry in one website, whereas nerdvana is going to be pointing to another one, right? As a side note, there is a way, if we think that all the packages that we're going to be using are going to be in a specific endpoint, then we can just set as a default URL, and we're going to just say that just look for every single thing in this specific URL. Cool. But what happens, for example, and this is an interesting note that you will run into if you start digging this out. We're going to have a couple of packages that are going to be on a registry, and we have a couple of packages that are going to be on GitHub. Let's say, for example, here. Is this big enough? Cool. We have byteme. We have a package that's called Gremlins that observes to, or that depends on byteme.pixels and depends on nerdvana.glitch, right? But then if we go and take a look at pixels, we're going to see that it also depends on nerdvana.glitch, but it depends on nerdvana.glitch in GitHub and not in the registry. So just to summarize, this is what we have. We have Gremlins depending on nerdvana.glitch, pixel, and then pixels depending on glitch from GitHub. So how does package.registry know that glitch and nerdvana.glitch are the same package? And it doesn't naturally, but it does use an endpoint. It can, and that's where this last endpoint that I mentioned was talking about. There's this last endpoint that's called lookup packages identifiers by URL, and if you run it, you're going to provide an URL, which in this case here is github.com/marcelo. Yes. /farewell, and that's going to give me the identifier that that registry has for that specific URL, which means that every package that's registered has the option of actually having an URL associated with it. So when Swift Package Registry, when the client goes to Swift Package Registry and asks if this URL is in the registry is going to return the identifier of the package, and that way Swift can disambiguate if two packages are the same. But coming from that, there is still one more thing. We have three ways of actually deciding what to do with that, right? So there are three options that come with Swift build. One, and the one that's disabled, enabled by default, is to disable SCM to registry transformation. And what it does is that it just lets it conflict. It does not try and check if things are the same. But the other two are interesting. The second one here, use registry identity for SCM, is about using the registry to find if two or more of the dependencies are the same, but then use the version in the registry. And the last one here is replace SCM with registry. Is the same, but instead of using the version that is in the source control manager in GitHub, it uses the registry version. And with that, we covered a very good chunk of what the Swift package registry is. And if you have any questions, fire up.
Just a reminder for those watching on live stream, feel free to ask questions either in the chat on YouTube or in Slack in the Melbourne Meetup channel. Does anybody in the room have questions?
Hey Marcelo, some of the JSON responses were escaped for things like URL and stuff like that. How important is that?
From what I observed, it's going to be a Swift implementation that's going to be parsing that. So everything there is dealt by Swift itself, which is usually very flexible with that. So unless you're dealing with some kind of third-party framework that has to go and retrieve packages for some, maybe an enterprise reason that wants to maybe check which packages there are in the enterprise registry, we're fine. Yeah?
What do you see as like the most common use case for something like this?
Well, the first use case that comes to your head is enterprise, right? You don't want to publish your dependencies, and because of the way that Swift Package Manager limits the dependencies these days, you see people going outside of the way to try and build like sub-Git repositories, or like making weird build time scripts that copy things in and make sure the dependencies are in on build time. This fixes that. This brings it to Apple's responsibility to make sure that the system works. But it's something, the strong use case is that really GitHub tags, it's not really designed for the use case that we're using here right now. We're using that tags to define versions, which is fine, but if you depend on something and the author of that changes the tag into another commit, apart from the checksum of that commit that was there before in your build system, you have no ways of trusting the system that you're going to be getting what you want. So you can think of like some repositories on GitHub if they could be given access to an infiltrator, they could go and change tags into like commits that could have some dodgy coding. So this by standard guarantees that the checksums keep the same. So yeah.
I have a question, Marcelo.
Yeah.
What's the biggest gotcha you found in your exploration with Swift registries and the support that's in Swift PM?
It's Xcode. I mean, I hate that I keep on bringing this back, but It's relatively transparent with Swift itself as a tool, and Swift Package Manager you can open it. If you have something that you do not really understand, you can go in the commit history of Swift Package Manager and figure out why decisions were made. You can see descriptions, and it's pretty open with Swift evolution. You can find the rationale behind decisions. When you bring that to an Xcode project, pretty much everything that we have seen is implemented in Xcode as well, to a certain level, but there is zero documentation available. So you might end up, if you trying to bring this up to a bigger project, either you slice your project down into smaller packages, Swift packages, that you can distribute and observe, or you could try to find the hidden build variables in Xcode that allow you to specify that you can choose the registry version of a package instead of the GitHub version. So
none of that's documented. No, not surprised.
yeah, it's sad.
Any other questions in the room for Marcelo?
It's quicker, yeah. Like there's a performance benefit of using it too. Is that or no?
It's 5 commands. Is it quicker than
Like just downloading from GitHub.
Is it quicker than GitHub? If you compare, if all things considered, if you consider GitHub is on the same speed as your local server that would be distributing the registries for in your internal network, it will be equivalent, to say the best, but considering Swift Package Registry would be run locally in your corporate network, it can be quicker.
I think there's a lot less overhead too, right? Because normally you need to clone the repo, and if the repo's big, you're downloading all of the history to come with that, and then checking out the tag, passing the package to
that's a
Swift
good point.
instead of just hitting an API and grabbing it.
That's a very good point. If I may do an unscripted exploration here, if I go back here to Swift Figlet and I go to my .build folder, I'm gonna see that there are like checkouts, actually repositories. You can see that there was a clone here of the Swift argument parser, right? And as well when I had it observed from GitHub, and then I go down to checkouts. It's actually the clone is going to be here. That the repository is going to be the specific checkout. Well, and then if I go to my registry, the registry folder, you're going to see download, scope, swell. It's just going to be the package the way that it was downloaded. So there was no, sometimes you're depending on a repo that is 300 megabytes big, if you go for Lotte, for example. With this, you would be downloading only a specific checkout, so you don't need to download the whole GitHub dependency. Swift does optimize it by not downloading the whole history, but still, this is just a release. So, and this is designed for purpose, right? Git was designed for so many things. This is designed for dependencies. So there are advantages to that. Oh, please.
Thanks, Marcelo, for the talk. My question is again about use case. So you mentioned about this is for more towards enterprise requirements for stability and security, right? But I wonder if you have so many dependencies, would you end up making all those dependencies locally maintained? And if so, pulling into this registry, if so, how do you resolve more future update on the original forked repo, and then there's potentially a lot to maintain by yourself. Is that the case?
You might be thinking about publishing public repositories into a specific internal registry. Is that?
Yeah, my understanding was you get the swell to the local maintained registry. Would you get to the point where you are doing a lot for all the dependencies you have?
look, you could if you have a restriction on going online. For example, if you are in a network that blocks GitHub access for build system, for example, you might end up having to maintain something that publishes to internal repo. But I think that's one use case, and we're coming back to the enterprise use case. But there are there could be use cases where you don't even publish to GitHub, right? So you have your internal libraries that are in your internal repositories. They're not published to GitHub, and you push them to a registry somewhere. In which case, you would have possibly a CI system that observes on changes to main or to a specific release branch and pushes to a registry and with incremental versioning. So is there an overhead? I'm not going to deny it, yeah. There is going to be an overhead. But it's a minimal overhead that you need to satisfy certain criteria, which would be not making something public and not distributing it over Git.
Yeah. Thanks. Just one minor follow-up. How do you keep the dependencies synchronized to the original one, like more security updates, fixes, etc.?
I think keeping dependencies synchronized is a choice, right?
Yeah.
From haven't explored that, but if I would do it, there would probably be some sort of hook in GitHub that that sends you requests when a new release is done for a specific software. You can hook into that and spawn a local CI check that builds your system and publishes to a local Swift registry.
Thank you.
I think that would be my approach. Thanks for the question.
Just a quick question about developer experience. How do you find prompt and rapid API? Like, what the advantages over terminal and Postman, for example?
Sorry,
You've lost your
you
screen
mean
there.
prompt? That's why my face was so big. Did you mean prompt?
Prompt, yeah. Like, why do you use that over terminal?
This one?
What's that?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a terminal geek. I mean, and at the same, it's the contradiction of my life, because I'm really big terminal geek, and I am also a very big fan of native experiences. And prompt kind of gives me this middle ground. It's by they call Coda? Panic. Panic, that's right. It's by Panic. It's an app that has been for iOS since forever, really, and they just released the Mac version a couple of months ago. It's really fast. It's fully true color support. So if you're looking to something to play with as a terminal, I recommend it.
And rapid API was the other one?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's more about having a native application. And I played with Postman for a while. There's also Insomnia. I think prompt is Rapid API, it was Paul until a couple months ago, or a year ago. It became Rapid API, but I think it's not as feature rich as the other ones, but
I've used Paul for years, can strongly recommend it.
yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Anything else? Thanks for having me.
Get up there.
Oh, I have a microphone. Sorry, I was running away from you.
I should have left the transition slide up.
Excuse me, sorry.
Oh, we good to go. Do you want me to intro now?
Yeah, the intro now.
That was awesome, Marcelo. Thanks for that. Next up, we got Michael Fletcher. Oh, the craft. Oh, no. Next up, we've got Michael Fletcher, the craft of code.
Your finger doesn't work on that.
Okay, yeah.
Just
I thought we had that shared ID thing.
No.
Okay. Do you want me to give you any lead in, or you got it?
No,
Yeah, okay.
no, I'm fine.
We'll do
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you, Michael. Clap, clap, clap.
All right. So I had no idea what Marcelo was talking about, which is just, there's some perfect little lead-ins there that, you'll see the little bit along the way, hopefully. This is totally a prototype of a topic that I've been working on for ages. So excuse the flaws. There's some little bits that need some polish yet. I'm calling this version 0.6.1. And I'm quite happy to take audience participation along the way. Warning, controversial opinions. Quick one about me. Anyone that doesn't know me, I'm a slightly varied background developer. Started with a fine art degree, not a computer science degree. I worked on various apps over the years, Latitude, ANZ, Post, and my first one was AFL Live back in 2009, I think, which taught me about football, which I knew nothing about, like ANZ taught me about the stock market, which I knew nothing about. These days, I work at a company called HDS. Hopefully that little animation catches up. If anyone's interested, there's a URL there talking about our tech. It's a logistics management system. We also do the work as well, a bunch of warehouses and a bunch of tools that we create. Very much an iOS shop, bunch of apps that run through our warehouses, all running on iPads, iPods, iPhones. We do roughly 5 million temperature controlled deliveries a year, and nearly 1 million boxes of wine get delivered out of our warehouse as well. My controversial opinion is the word engineering, which I thought was kind of good because Marcelo had engineer on his title, which is perfectly fine. I'm just going to challenge that concept. I've got a lot of friends that are in engineering faculties. They're mechanical, they're chemical, they're electrical, all of those. I've got a nephew that's a traffic engineer, ground surveying, etc. But when I think about software development, I don't see it as engineering per se. When I look at engineering, I think of big constructions. This particular one dances in between. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this. Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, a church that's been under construction for the last 160 odd years, I think. Very much dances between engineering and craftsmanship. There's all stonework, very much engineered, but couldn't be built without the extreme fine craftsmanship that is required. The word craft has some bad connotations in a lot of cultures. It's your knitting, it's your festive crafts. But for me and my background, when I think of the word craft, I think about a finely made piece of someone that's honed their skill over many, many years. I look at things like this. It's a utilitarian object, or maybe ceremonious, whatever. But these things are made by meticulous craftsmen. I look at the craftsmanship that goes into something. It's a tool, it's a guitar, but extreme passion goes into creating these objects. And I think much about the same when it comes to software. Look at things like this, and the amount of detail that goes into these things. It's craftsmanship. I look at a piece of jewellery and a hallmark that goes on the inside. The only person that sees that hallmark is the person wearing it. And to me, it's kind of like this little thing at the top of our files. I know it's frowned upon in some enterprises to put these things in the top, but to me, it's the name of the person that created this little piece of craft. My background is actually goldsmithing before I got into code. I studied under a professor that was one of the world's knowledge resources on Etruscan gold work. 2nd century BC, this little piece, 2nd century BC, I've seen it. That's a photo I took through a glass cabinet, so it's a little fuzzy. But that whole piece, it's about this big. Made by people 2,000 odd years ago. These little things are hollow. They're decorated with tiny little balls that are about 0.1 of a millimetre. I'm pretty sure back in this day, these people had extremely poor eyesight and couldn't walk around unaided. But this is where I come from with this craftsmanship. Then, 2008, iPhone SDK came out. Really butted my interest. Suddenly we had this little device we could hold in our hand. It was tactile. And I credit this SDK for really lifting software from being your average terrible Windows interface to being something that is something that you appreciate, something that's finely crafted, the icons, the touch, the ability to interact with software. In my opinion, that's really lifted the level of software ever since. It's a whole new paradigm. So when I think about handmade, I think, how many things do you have that are handmade in your life? Most things we have are manufactured, mass-produced. I look around the room, I think, maybe some of this plumbing, very much craftsman, handmade, maybe not so nicely handmade, but chairs, everything. We live in a very manufactured world. However, a lot of this manufacturing is done by handcrafted code. Kind of ironic. So when I look at a beautifully crafted app or game, I actually see it like a beautifully crafted piece of furniture. And there's something I was building in my garage a few weeks ago. I look at this and I think, there's some similarities there. And yeah, some of this has got to do with UI design, but the UI design can't be executed without the craft of the code. Meticulous work that goes into making this possible to view and interact with and animate. And the success of these things is often a collaboration between the designer and the developer. I don't know if anyone's held one of these beautiful little items. Even the award is a beautifully crafted item. Little example I've been playing around with. Does anyone know what this is? Vernier caliper, used for measuring things of fine degree of accuracy. When I was at uni back in that year. It was my commonly used tool, one of my best little friends in my toolkit. So when I was prototyping an interface I wanted to play with, this is a piece of code they never ever finished. I couldn't decide on the design, but the one thing I liked was the actual interaction with the measurements. Getting the clicking just right, getting it the spring, etc. And with just that craft of the code, the interaction, it was floating my boat. It was just the passion that went into creating it. Never released it. A bunch of people have had it on test flight for about the last 8 years. It was written in Objective-C, but yeah, there you go. I don't share my things terribly often, but you got to see that one. When I think about engineering, I think about these large, massive projects. I think about the planning, the hole in the ground, the massive team, the cost. And to me, this is engineering. There's not, admittedly there's some software projects where there's a lot of cost, a lot of large teams, and a huge hole in the ground full of money. But to me, where the developer really comes alive, the soul of the developer is in the craft of the code. The bit they get to do every day and get to hone their skills and appreciate to share with others. Then I was thinking about the difference between engineering and architecture. I look at this structure. There's nothing wrong with that. It holds up a roof. But something that can really be appreciated, that's the roof in the Madrid airport. Holds up the roof with beauty. Again, huge cost difference. We'll just push that aside. But the elegant construction of the engineering, that's what I'm starting to think about. Total flip side. This is like a finely crafted building. But the nightmare of the engineering under this one actually is an engineering problem. If anyone's interested in the work of Frank Gehry, crazy architect, there's a great documentary movie called The Constructive Madness. Very crazy band. Very expensive buildings. So also I think about those engineering projects, I think about massive bridges like this. From the design to the execution, nothing much changes along the way. There's a little bit of adaptation maybe in learning and failing, but it was always going to be a bridge that had to get to the other side. It was basically going to look like that. Software projects are rarely that well defined when they start to be built. I think about average software project when it buds off. It's canvas tent. There's 2 people sleeping under this canvas tent. The intention is it's going to be an office block with 100 people working in there, but it starts out with 2 developers sleeping under a canvas tent. You don't demolish that building every year and start again. The finished project, it's kind of like there's a patchwork quilt there, still with some of those bits of canvas in there. So that's that difference between that massive engineered project that was always going to be that multi-tiered building to that software project that's finely crafted along the way. We need our tool belt. Sadly, my photo's in the middle there, ruining my similarity between the tool belt and the Xcode, but
Sorry, I've been quick.
The engineers and the architects really get their hands dirty when it comes to actual construction. That's where the next team comes in, of the tradesmen, with their varied levels of execution. If you've ever had tradesmen to your house, you always know that some guys do it well, some guys do it poorly. To me, it's the same with the code. A developer often rolls up with his toolkit, full of custom little tools that he's built over the years, special jigs to do all those different things and remove the complexity of some of those mundane tasks. It's a great little toolbox. So my iPad's going berserk at me. Shut up. Many of those solutions that come out along the way are perfectly valid until the requirements change. And that's when the craftsman adapts and blends and uses his years of experience. This little example here is the ZPL code required to do an Australia Post label. No one wants to deal with that. I have a tool that I created 10 odd years ago that I still use to this day. Again, some Objective-C in there, some Swift, to remove this from my life. So I don't need to see things like this. Still sometimes look at them, but that's those toolbox, those little custom-made tools that you carry around your toolbox, you pull out for the next project. It's the craftsman. I don't show my code very often, but this was some stuff I was playing with a few weeks ago. I need a little tool for tags. It was just for entering tags, rendering tags. I was really amazed that just out of some, 30 lines of Swift UI code, I managed to do some tags, entering, rendering, entering to the data, and also show the tools on the keyboard. Pretty simple. I'll scan away from my code so no one reads it. To me, IKEA furniture is like the anti-craft. And I was trying to look at some parodies between code and IKEA furniture, basically. And I was thinking optionals. Contrived piece of code, but to me, this piece of IKEA furniture, bunch of things. How many people get to the end of an IKEA project and discover they've missed some pieces? They're on the floor, you don't know where they went. and that's why the whole thing's rattly. To me, optionals are like that. Too many optionals. We've got to return errors because some things won't work. Just toying around with this little bit of code the other night, and to me, this fit better. Just using an enum, no error to deal with, something that fit closely, and to me, it was like a little dovetail and draw. Much more strong. Little can go wrong. No wriggle room. To me, my little bit of code there that I was playing with as a sample for this was my dovetail. Another little one I was playing with, just by throwing in the type alias. There's nothing wrong with that product ID being an integer, but being a product identifier provides me with a cleaner interface all the way through, minimal code change. It's just that little craftsman tool to get out and chisel away at. This one, when I saw Marcelo's font rendering, I thought, ASCII art. You open up a file that some loving developers put some concentrated effort and time into, and you see something like that. Someone's put some craft, some love into their code and shared a diagram that allows me to understand what they're doing. I once had Oliver Jones slice up some of my prototype code, and to me it was like the master with his tools. To me, there was no engineering in that. It was just pure mastery of a craftsman. Cutting up, slicing, gluing it back together, and making it work. Craftsman. So, prepare for contentious debate. But to me, that heavyweight structure of a building is like the massive team of locked doors and different floors. And for a small software development team, to me, it's like a bunch of little craftsmen. They can't live in this building. They're running upstairs all day trying to find the keys to the doors. To me, the craft of the code and that small development project, it's a bunch of craft people in their workshop sharing the tools. So that's my little opinion, and I'd be really interested in if anyone had some code snippets to share with me to flesh this out to a greater topic. I've recently found SwiftUI is just such a beautiful tool for crafting interfaces. It's a bit like my Japanese chisels. It has its sharp edges and there can be blood, but it brings out the craftsmanship in the developer to enjoy their interface. That's my little share with you all. If anyone would like to share some code snippets with me, hit me up on Slack, but thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or opinions they want to throw back at Fletch? I guess to break the ice and kick us off, we've got one from Slack that you didn't use the word art enough to describe your code. What do you think?
No.
Art versus craft?
Yeah, it's another contentious debate. Art is a bit nebulous, I think. Craft is a manufacturing.
Engineering is manufacturing.
Yeah, I'll think about that a little further.
Is there a sliding scale
Maybe
between
it's because
art
I have
and
a fine art
engineering?
degree and I try
crafts
to
in the
bury
middle?
that. But yeah, I spend too much time studying art history. Questions, opinions?
Any questions or... Oh, we got one?
So I firmly believe all apps are art, whether or not the developers intend them to be, simply because of the emotional impact. And a lot of what you've said really helped contextualize the last 7 months of my life. So I'd just like to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
But I'd like to question where you draw the line between engineering and art or craft. The example you gave with the authentication system, that is something that it is absolutely beautiful. It is fantastic. It shows the elegance of something that's been well thought out. And as much as I would say that is something that has been crafted from the heart, I would also say that's an example of good engineering. You might not be architecting something months in advance, creating this massive system, but that clearly shows someone sitting down, thinking something through, and creating it. And that is, to me, both art and engineering, and I'd like to hear what you think of my spicy little take here.
I need to continue to think about this.
No, you can't stand up here and give a presentation like that and then hide when opinions come back at you. Come on.
Thinking about other engineering friends, like one of my very good friends does bridge and tunnel projects. $500 million projects is common for him. But I think of another friend who's actually an engineer who used to build V8 supercars. And I think, okay, that engineer actually is making things with his hands and crafting things that are masterful. So yeah, there's crossover.
As always, really thought-provoking. Loved the talk. And feel free to say this is a better conversation over drinks afterwards. But my view, and I'm going to be blurry with rules around questions, is that engineering and craftsmanship are just ways of looking at a particular discipline rather than separate or distinct. What are your thoughts on that particular way to approach it all?
To me, I always think of engineering as that very right and wrong approach. There's a solution to the problem. And I'm still pondering this. This is something I've been noodling for a while. I'm out here to be, share some opinions and hear some back, and hopefully take notes and work on 0.7 to eventually get to a first release.
Hey, thanks for the talk. I thought it was really interesting, and yeah, also agree that code can and should be art. You talked about art history and your love of art history. If you were a art historian in 100 years' time, looking back on the code that you've written today, what would be maybe the top 3 things that you'd hope that they would notice?
I have to admit to being a little post-technical. I don't write as much code as I used to. It's my objective this year to write a little more. And when I think about finishing, like I spend more time building furniture than building code at the moment. And I never get the opportunity to finally sand and finish and call it a finished piece. So I wouldn't say any of my code is finally crafted just yet.
Another opinion from Slack while we're moving the mic around. Neil is posting that beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Very much.
Possibly, it's all subjective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's a pretty thought-provoking talk, so thanks. Well, when I started, which was probably even long before you did, there was no such thing as software engineering. We were just programmers back in the day. And I think the engineering aspect came as a way to sort of productionise things. So you've got the craftsman, you're in the corner there, and you showed us some things which didn't make it into production, so you haven't got the engineering steps around that, which sort of make the thing robust and make sure that it's tested and make sure that it ticks all the boxes. And that's where I think there's room for both things to fit in there. So you've got the craftsman beavering away in his workshop, but you've also got this machine outside of him, which is the engineering part, which people found the need during my career to bring on board. So not really a question, just a comment.
I think, the engineering then is almost the mix of the disciplines.
Yeah,
bring
it brings
them together.
Yeah, it brings. Well, they were trying to bring an engineering discipline because we were all out of control back in the old days, and production code wasn't what it could have been. So they felt like we have to make engineers out of these bloody craftsmen.
It's funny because I studied in a jewellery department that became part of the engineering department, so we'd use their machinery.
Can I just supplement that quickly? No, come on. Go. So the thing following up on that, it's like the question I asked myself was, am I an engineer or am I a craftsman? Or what do I want to be? Do I want to be an engineer or a craftsman? I understand there's sort of a difference. I don't know what that difference is. But what I took from your talk was I enjoy myself when I feel like I'm being a craftsman as opposed to the engineer. And yeah, you can work with that for version 7 or whatever it is. But yeah.
That's the soul of the developer bit. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's building on kind of what they were saying there. Engineers tend to have stricter regulations and guidelines to work within. Chemical engineers,
ISO, yeah.
yeah. Building engineers have building codes to work within. People working in medical field in particular have very specific regulations to work within. Would we be better as software engineers if we had a structure like that? If we had an actual apprenticeship that we had to learn ethics and these structures and legal regulations and things like that to give us the guide rails to make things much better.
Which is funny
rather
when
than
you
the
say
current.
apprenticeship, because I think of tradesmen.
Because we don't really have apprenticeships. We have, we have junior developers, and then suddenly you become a mid and a senior developer, usually just based on time. We don't have a structured way of doing that. Would we be better if we had that?
No.
Strongly rebutted.
Thank you.
I think it's hard in a discipline that moves so quickly, right? The goalposts that are there today are different tomorrow. Are there any other questions in the room? I think you got one more?
Just one little comment, maybe. I'm an engineer by
By
diploma.
chosen title?
I was no.
Hmm?
It's actually I was.
Okay.
I'm
You were an
actually
engineer. Okay.
yeah, electrical engineering. But I think going a little bit with Amy is like it's just different hats, really. Like when I have to make sure that I meet certain criteria, I put my engineering hat. If I have inputs and outputs, that I have to put my engineering hat.
And I saw your
then
beautiful little
if I-
toolbox.
Hmm?
I saw your beautiful little toolbox.
Thank you. And then if I have wiggle room to put some extra, I put my craftsman's
Mm-hmm.
hat.
Yeah.
And I just want to summarize that I am so much happier as a craftsman
Yeah.
than as an engineer.
Yeah,
But
it's the polish on top.
we still live in a world where that needs products coming out. There is still a chain of payments going in, chain of sold. So it's a life that I abide to, and I don't think it's wrong. But I am a happier craftsman than an engineer. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to. Obviously, didn't get my point across well. I'll work on that more. But it's kind of like the engineer is the starter point, and you become the craftsman. It's the honing the skill over the time. Yeah. Thank you.
I think just as an addendum to that, I believe in Queensland the job title engineer is actually a protected term. You can't have unless you're a member of the Institute of Engineers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll leave that where it is. Thanks, Fletch.
Thank you.
Awesome work. Oh, awesome work. I'll be up all night thinking about that one, Michael. Thank you. But yeah. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you Marcelo and Michael for the awesome talks tonight. Just to finish up, reminders about coding night next week on Wednesday. Come and craft some code. And then, done, you coming? Okay, thanks. Yeah, been thinking the whole time about that one. Then we've got social night, which I was meant to Saint and Rogue, Collins Street? Yes. Little Collins Street. Perfect. Yes. And that's on the 30th of July. Thanks again to our sponsors, Mansell Group and REA Group. Awesome sponsors. And then for anyone that's interested, some social time at the Mitre Tavern just up the road. And thanks everyone for tuning in online. It was, CocoaHeads 177. Woo!